the United States and other like-minded nations find themselves directly opposed by a regime with contrary aims and a totally different concept of life. That regime adheres to a false philosophy which purports to offer freedom, security, and greater opportunity to mankind. Misled by that philosophy, many peoples have sacrificed their liberties, only to learn to their sorrow that deceit and mockery, poverty and tyranny are their reward. That false philosophy is communism.
It's time for Radical Truth with Tony Gurley.
What would you do if there was one book available that gave you all of the following? Number one, an in-depth, thorough, boots-on-the-ground understanding of the relationship between men and women, husbands and wives in Islamic countries. If it also gave you a thorough, boots-on-the-ground explanation about the hijab, the head covering, and how women are pretty much forced to wear it, and what happens if they don't wear it. If it gave you an understanding about female circumcision. If it gave you an understanding and all that you needed to know about how revolutions take place. And speaking of that, let you know what is currently happening in America right now. Imagine if this same book, just one chapter of the book, gave you cutting-edge information about how we know Islam is a lie, not based on someone's opinion, but based on objective evidence like history, archaeology, manuscript evidence, etc. All of that. And in one chapter that if a Muslim read it, would very likely cause them to leave Islam if they are intellectually honest with themselves because of the devastating information that it presents about Islam's true origin. Folks, all of that and more is available in one book. So the answer to the question of what would you do if should be, I would buy that book, I would read that book, and I would tell as many people as I can about that book. And perhaps you want to buy a case of them to give out to people who need this information. But folks, this is a very, very important topic, and that is why it is a two-part series. The name of the book is An American Woman Living in Egypt, Life During an Islamic Takeover. The author is Sherry Behrens. Folks, I can guarantee you that 1 year from now, in October of 2021, there are two different scenarios which may be reality as far as people looking back. So will people be looking back and thinking, wow, that two-part series came out at the perfect time. It was so informative. I'm so glad I learned about the book, bought the book, read the book, told other people about it, because look where America is now. We have informed voters everywhere. We have informed people everywhere. Or will it be another scenario where people are looking back thinking, I should have shared that with people. I should have helped inform people. I should have bought the book, because now I'm realizing life has changed, and the warning was in that book, because folks, history is repeating itself. And it's been said, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it, and unfortunately, those who do study history are kind of destined to sit back and watch other people repeat it, unfortunately. That's why we need to get as many people informed as possible, and that is why this two-part series is something that you need to share via email, put it on social media, however you want to share it with people. The information is here, and in case you don't have any money to buy the book, either the paperback or the digital, which we'll get to in just a moment, this free two-part series is available on multiple platforms. YouTube, BitChute, the podcast will be in iTunes, mainly go to our website, radicaltruth.net, and that'll give you the links to all the different platforms that we're on. But folks, this is the book that we are talking about. This is the book that people need to be informed about. And no surprise, Sherry is being censored. She's being shadow banned. So she needs our help, and we should be grateful to her for writing this book. Folks, this book is available currently on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Those are the two most well-known platforms. On Amazon, you can get the paperback for $14.99. You can get the Kindle for $10.99. On Barnes & Noble, you can get the paperback for $17.95. You can get the Nook digital version for $10.99. Now, on Amazon right now, this book is ranked in 3 different categories. And of course, based on how many people buy it, the number goes down closer to number 1, of course. And if other people buy other books in these categories, then the number of this book starts to rise because other books are being purchased more than this one. But the 3 categories it's currently ranked in are women in Islam, religious fundamentalism, and Egyptian history. And of course, that makes complete sense. But folks, when you read through this book and you realize the information that is in it, here are a number of categories that it should be ranked in. And these categories are communism and socialism, political commentary and opinion, radical political thought, constitutions, political corruption and misconduct, terrorism, political freedom, violence in society, and history of religion and politics. Folks, the first 3 categories that I mentioned, which it is ranked in currently, and all of these categories I just mentioned, this book needs to be ranked number 1 in all of them. And you can help make that happen by buying it. It doesn't matter if you buy the paperback version or the digital. Get this book. I always prefer physical hard copy because it can't be edited, it can't be deleted. You can't actually, accidentally erase it or delete it on your own computer or whatever. Have a hard copy. Again, buy an extra copy to give to someone else. This is such timely information, folks. And when you listen to the content in this 2-part series, you will realize that as well. Now, in general, when you buy stuff on Amazon, I've talked about this a couple times, but especially with this, I mean, this would be great if you did it here too. A lot of people still don't know about Amazon Smile. And basically that is just a separate way of logging into your Amazon account, which is connected to charities. And Amazon allows you to choose a charity so that whenever you buy anything on Amazon, doesn't matter if it's books, movies, clothing, appliances, whatever you buy on Amazon, they will take a certain percentage of that and then send it to your chosen ministry every quarter as a donation. And this is one way that you can help support Radical Truth. We are so thankful for the people who just donate in general. We're a 501c3. You can give a tax-deductible donation at any time. But if you're shopping on Amazon already, why not, especially if it costs you nothing extra, have a percentage of what you spend go to Radical Truth as a donation? So just go to smile.amazon.com. Usually you go to amazon.com. Just go smile.amazon.com. Log in as usual with your username and password that you already have, and then choose your charity. Radical Truth is listed in there. So choose it and shop as usual. And we thank you so much for taking this minutes or two to set up this process so that your purchases end up resulting in a donation to our ministry to continue our work of proclaiming truth, sharing the gospel, and exposing Islam on a full-time basis. Now, a little bit of Sherry's background. Her website is sherryberens.net, and that is where you want to go overall. You can follow her on social media, but no surprise, she's being censored, she's being shadow banned. So sherryberens.net is a place that she can actually control, and that is the main place you want to go if nothing else. Now, when you go to her site, you'll see some buttons across the top, and on the far right, it'll say more. If you click on that, you'll see a long drop down of articles that she has written. And when you read the content in those articles, no, you won't be surprised in any way why she's being censored and shadow banned. Now, many people have seen my presentation called Lights Out When Islam Rules America. It's had over 13,000 views on BitChute now, and it was just about a week ago that it was then added to YouTube. So it's there now as well. And in that, I mention Sherry and her book. And I also mention in that presentation a former presentation that I created called The Muslim Brotherhood: Origin, Identity, and Agenda. Now, a while back, more than a year ago, perhaps two, I don't recall the exact timing, Sherry saw my presentation, and she lived in Egypt for decades, so she knows her stuff. And this is what she said when she watched my presentation on the Muslim Brotherhood. She said, "The video is excellent and comprehensive in its subject matter, which is difficult to accomplish in less than an hour, but you did it, and you did it well." She also saw Lights Out When Islam Rules America, and she rewatched it again recently. And she says, yeah, I'm aware of this stuff. And of course she is, living in Egypt and just being aware of what's happening in America right now. But once again, she's very complimentary. And she was so thankful that I told her that I want to do a show, which now is going to be a 2-part series on her book to help get her information out to the world. Folks, this is my way of honoring Sherry and her husband and the sacrifices that they've made and the dedication that they have had to inform the world about what they've been through and what America is facing right now. Your way to support her is to get her book. So do that. And when we come back after the break, we're going to get into this book and what it contains.
Hi, I'm Joe Carey with Radical Truth Ministry, helping Christians reach Muslims with the gospel. How do you get a conversation with a Muslim started? One method I like to use is icebreaker questions, which are non-confrontational and open-ended. Here's an example. Tell your Muslim friend you want to clear up any misunderstanding he might have about Christianity, and then ask, would you please tell me what you know about Christianity? I posed this question to an imam in his own mosque, and his response was very convicting. He said, I've been an imam here for 24 years, and I've never had a Christian come to talk with me. You are the very first Christian that has ever approached me. Then he said, I know nothing about Christianity. Would you please tell me what you believe? And for the next hour and a half, I shared the gospel with the imam right in his own mosque. A simple question can go a long way to open doors of conversation. You'll find more tips on sharing with Muslims at our website at radicaltruth.net. I'm Joe Carey for Radical Truth Ministry.
Radical Truth Media presents Understanding Islam, now available on a 5-DVD set and resource disc. 20 hours of apologetics training covering Introduction to Apologetics to Islam, the Christian and the Great Commission, Islam 101, Basic Beliefs and Practices, Christianity and Islam's Theological Differences, Jihad and Muhammad, the authority of the Bible versus the Quran, Women under Islam, Answering Objections, Sharing the Gospel with Muslims, Do's and Don'ts of Muslim Evangelism. This is one of the very best so far, especially in the way the material is organized, the relevance, and the clear presentation of the Islamic worldview and mindset. Radical Truth presents Understanding Islam, featuring Joe Carey, founder of Radical Truth. For more information, visit www.radicaltruth.net. As a 501c3 Christian ministry, Radical Truth is dependent upon God to provide our monthly financial support, and He provides through people like you who realize the need for this vital work. Your regular prayers and monthly financial gifts allow us to continue our full-time effort to equip the body of Christ with the training necessary to effectively engage Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ. At Radical Truth, we proclaim the truth, share the gospel, and expose Islam. Please partner with us by visiting radicaltruth.net and making a tax-deductible donation. That's radicaltruth.net.
Muslims have no assurance of their salvation. There's only one exception to that. There's one way that a Muslim can know that they can bypass the day of judgment and be ushered into paradise immediately, by shedding their own blood. Has your God done anything that measures up to what He required Abraham to do to test His love? You see, if the test of man's love and devotion to God is being willing to sacrifice His only Son, then there's only one way, my Muslim friend, that God can demonstrate His love to you. You don't find the answer in the Quran. You find it in the Bible. But God loved us in that while we were still sinners, what? Christ died for us.
This is Radical Truth with Tony Gurley.
Before the break, I gave you a little bit of background on Sherry Behrens and her book that every American needs to read. I told you where you could find it and why this two-part series is so important. Now, folks, when you look in this book, you will see 5 chapters. Those chapters are Egypt 101. Chapter 2 is the Revolution, U.S. Involvement. Chapter 3 is the Christian Origins of the Quran. Chapter 4 is the Beginning of the End, and Chapter 5 is the End. Now, the End is a full chapter. There's not a page that says the end. It sums up everything that is in the book. And then, folks, you have a roughly 20-page bibliography. And if you purchased all the books that she references, if you were even able to find all of them, and also some of them are Arabic sources, so unless you understand Arabic, you won't be able to read through those anyway. But folks, all the sources that she gives would easily cost you over $1,000 if you got all of those books. And again, all of this information is in her book, which again ranges between $11 and $18, depending on what platform you buy it on, and if you buy the paperback or the digital. Folks, we're going to go through I'm going to give you a little bit of background in these chapters. However, I want you to get the book because it's going to give you all the information that you can't get in this two-part series. But I was thinking, in this two-part series, what should I give you? Because I know there's people who are going to think, I want to get that book, but I don't have the money to buy it. And folks, where we are right now as a country, you need to have the pretty much plan of what you should do, and that is in the book as well. There's an introduction before chapter 1 on Egypt 101, and after chapter 5 of the end, there is a conclusion, and it says, what can we do? So folks, out of all the information that's in here, those are the two things I want to share with you. I want to share with you the introduction, and I want to share with you what can we do, because again, where we are right now, people need the action steps. Even if you can't get the book, you need the action steps, and the action steps are what other people need as well. Get the book to get all the meat in all of the chapters. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary of each one, and the subtitles within each chapter, which let you know what these chapters contain. Chapter 1 is Egypt 101, and here you're going to get a boots on the ground, pretty much walking around with Sherry, daily diary account of what she learned, what she saw, what she heard, what she went through. She loves the Egyptian people. She loves the culture. But folks, there's a much darker element to her story that you will get in this book. So Egypt 101 is the first chapter. The second chapter is the Revolution, U.S. Involvement. And here are the subtitles or the parts of that chapter. Terrorism and the Security Police, President Mubarak, Egypt's protest, rage, chaos, and violence against Christians, Egypt's first free and fair, quote-unquote, presidential election, in days of wine and roses, or days of no wine and no noses. Chapter 3 is the Christian origins of the Quran. And before I give you an explanation of this, let me read the subtitles within it, or again, the portions of this chapter. The Near East before, during, and after Muhammad. Mecca, the Arab transition to power. Rock inscriptions and the story they tell. The transition to Islam. Hadith and Islamic law. Islam, fact or fiction. The Dome of the Rock. Words of God or man-made language. The Yemeni manuscripts, the oldest Qurans in existence. To veil or not to veil, that is the question. And how Islam is implemented into the modern world. Now, folks, a little bit of background on this. When myself and Joe Carey, the founder of Radical Truth, years ago took classes on Apologetics to Islam, we were learning cutting-edge information on Islam's true origins. And this was a number of years ago. And folks, that same information is still considered cutting edge right now, simply because we're learning more and more stuff every month, it seems, and just so many people in the world don't have this information yet. So it's cutting edge, it seems, to anyone who's hearing about it for the first time. But when we were taking Apologetics to Islam and learning the alternative story, because you figure if the traditional story of Islam and the claims that it was the original religion of the world, that everyone is actually born Muslim according to the doctrine of fitra, and so on, and Islam is just false as far as theology and doctrine, and its claims about history, there has to be an alternate explanation, obviously. So we have the traditional view, and that's what you get if you're talking with a Muslim, if they know their stuff about Islam. The traditional view is what you get in most sources when you just read about Islam as a religion. But folks, there are different camps of scholars. There are revisionists and neo-revisionists. And when they look at the archaeology, the actual history, especially looking at non-Islamic sources, which have, of course, all kinds of devastating contradictory information compared to what Islam claims about world history, the scholars are finding that there was a slow development in the Quran. They've concluded that the traditional view, quote unquote, is way off when compared to archaeology. In the 700s, there was an intermediate monotheism, forming what we consider an amalgamation of Jewish and Christian influences that over time, because of influence from heretical and unorthodox Christian views, incorporated a strong animosity for central Christian doctrine, such as the deity of Christ and the Trinity. And what is Islam, ultimately? It's pretty much a polemic against Christianity. You know, Jesus died, he rose from the dead, he is the eternal Son of God in human flesh. And Islam denies all three of those things. So it's attacking Christianity, which is a polemic. And that is what Islam is. And it's amazing, all the information that's coming out about Islam. And this is information that you need to learn so that you can share it, if necessary, with the Muslim. Obviously, the most important thing you can share is the gospel itself. That's the power of God unto salvation. That is what Muslims need. Folks, you get the book, you're going to get a ton of unbelievable information in this chapter 3, again, called The Christian Origins of the Quran. Chapter 4 is the beginning of the end. The portions of this chapter are Morsi's 1 year in power, an Islamic constitution. Morsi declares himself dictator. Morsi eliminates the Supreme Court and removes 3,500 judges. Rising attacks on journalists, women, and Christians. and Morsi replaces governors with terrorists. Now, Chapter 5, The End. This is what it includes. Western media collusion. Morsi is arrested. The bloodshed begins. Intensified attacks on Christians. The State Department under Hillary Clinton and Jihad Muhammad. And lastly, resistance with a question mark. Now, there are a number of appendices in here as well after the conclusion. And those are the years 633 through 833. Also, the Islamification of biblical history. Also, further evidence that the Quran was originally a Christian liturgical book. Next is important facts that took place during Muawiyah. And lastly, iconoclasm. It was the Christians who destroyed icons, images, and monuments. And then again, folks, nearly a 20-page bibliography. And again, it's easily cost you $1,000, perhaps $2,000, if you got all these sources. And again, that's if you were able to read through some of them, because a number of them are in Arabic. Folks, this book is so important. The cutting edge information as far as the Christian origins of the Quran that chapter 3 talks about, even today, there are hardly any books at all. I mean, maybe a handful at the most that actually present this information. Most of this information is in YouTube videos. They haven't even been put in books yet. Folks, Islam is a lie. It has false doctrine, false theology. If you look outside of Islam, there is no evidence to back up Islam. The Quran, the Hadith, all of Islam's sources is circular reasoning. It's basically making claims about itself. But what happens when you look outside the Quran? Folks, if you look outside Islamic sources, and I'm not even talking about the Bible, but I'm talking about non-Christian and even anti-Christian sources, even they refute Islam, the Islamic worldview, and the Islamic claims about history, because they will reference in some way the historical Jesus who actually did exist, unlike the fake, false Isa of the Quran. And they will proclaim the true Jesus of history who, guess what, lines up with the Judeo-Christian worldview, not necessarily theologically, but historically. Folks, watch part 2, because we're going to get more of the information in Sherry's book. We'll talk with you next time on Radical Truth.